Welcome back to the Liz Wheeler Show, or should I say, good day, fellow garbage. There's nobody I'd rather slum around with than you pieces of trash. I am, of course, referring to Joe Biden, the sitting president of the United States, calling us, Trump supporters, garbage. Take a listen to this.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters, says President Joe Biden about Trump supporters. Because President Joe Biden was talking about Trump when he says he's talking about Trump. Today's show, by the way, is sponsored by First Cup Coffee. Guys, go ahead, snag a bag, go to firstcup.com, use my promo code Liz. You will get 10% off your order. The mainstream media has been very quick to try to dismiss this. They're calling it a gaffe. They say this was taken out of context. It's not really what Joe Biden said. Joe Biden is always making gaffes, but we know his heart, the mainstream media says. Well, let me just tell you this. Michael Kinsley is the founder of Slate. You might have never heard of his name. That's okay. But Michael Kinsley says that a gaffe in Washington, D.C. is different than the dictionary definition of a gaffe. A gaffe in Washington, D.C. is when a politician inadvertently tells the truth. This is what he writes. He says, the dictionary defines gaffe as a social error or faux pas. A gaffe is the opposite of a lie. It's when a politician tells the truth. It doesn't take too much to commit a gaffe. He goes on in Time magazine in 2007, he said, it used to be there was truth and there was falsehood. Now there's spin and there are gaffes. Spin is often thought to be synonymous with falsehood or lying, but more accurately, it is indifference to the truth. A politician engaged in spin is saying what he or she wishes were true. And sometimes by coincidence, it is. Meanwhile, a gaffe, it has been said, is when a politician tells the truth, or more precisely, when he or she accidentally reveals something truthful about what is going on in his or her head. A gaffe is what happens when the spin breaks down. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what we are witnessing when we hear President Joe Biden call us garbage. Remember back in 2019, Joe Biden said, I am a gaffe machine. End quote. And also in 2019, President Trump said, I hope it's Biden, meaning the nominee. When I say something that you might think is a gaffe, Trump said, it's on purpose. It's not a gaffe. When Biden says something dumb, it's because he's dumb. Well, I'd take it a step further. I'm not sure this is because President Joe Biden is dumb. I think it's because President Joe Biden hates us. This is the inadvertent truth. It's also funny, by the way, because it seems since Kamala Harris staged the coup against Joe Biden that Joe Biden has been trying to sabotage her campaign. Think about this. First, Joe Biden puts on a Trump hat. That video went viral. A Trump wearing the campaign merchandise of your political opposition. It also highlights the contradiction from the mainstream media narrative from the past couple of days. The mainstream media has been telling us that the Madison Square Garden rally that Trump held, an incredible rally, by the way. If you haven't listened to it, you should go listen to it. It's good. But they've been telling us it's a Nazi rally. No evidence that it's a Nazi rally because it's not. The mainstream media and Kamala are just desperate and they can't contend on any policy with Trump. So they're just throwing these false accusations that we're all racist. But think about this. If Trump actually were a Nazi, which he's not, wouldn't wearing a MAGA hat be the equivalent of wearing a swastika? Well, using the standards of the mainstream media, then yes, it would. And here we have Joe Biden putting on a MAGA hat shortly after Kamala Harris staged her coup against him. Kind of undercuts their message that we're all supposed to be Nazis, don't you think? And then, of course, Joe Biden had a press conference. He went out to the press gaggle right as Kamala Harris, was speaking at a rally in Flint, Michigan. This was the first time Joe Biden had spoken to the press since he was deposed as Democratic nominee for president. And all the cameras, you remember what happened, all the cameras just shifted from Kamala speaking in Flint to Joe Biden. These are the moves that you make if you're trying to sabotage someone's campaign. And now this. How on earth could this possibly help Kamala Harris win the election to have Joe Biden admit that the Democrats think that we are garbage? Garbage! Something that you discard, that you throw away, something that smells and is rotten. No one's even talking about Kamala Harris's closing speech anymore. Can you even think of one thing that she said? No, instead, Kamala Harris is now forced to answer for Joe Biden's remarks, which we'll get to in a minute. But first, I want to talk about the full context here because we have the New York Times claiming that the full context of Joe Biden's remark, they're basically running interference for him. They are his political cleanup machine. And this is what they said. Let me bring this up. Their headline is Biden appears to insult Trump supporters as garbage, but quickly tries to clarify. The subtitle is, in a posting on social media, President Biden said he was talking about racist language, not Trump supporters. So think about this. This is the New York Times, an organization that you and I know is biased. They are propagandists for Kamala Harris, but they masquerade as being an unbiased source of news. He appeared to insult. So what they're doing right here is they're gaslighting you. The definition of gaslighting is trying to make someone think that they are crazy for seeing something with their own eyes or hearing something with their own ears or for thinking something with their own mind. You are crazy for believing what you see. And that's what the New York Times is doing right here. They're saying it's out of context. You guys are not interpreting this correctly, even though you saw the video and you heard Joe Biden's words. So for full context here, let's actually watch, well, the full context. We saw that short clip of Joe Biden calling us garbage. But what did he say shortly before he called us garbage and shortly after? Let's watch the longer clip here and see if we did, in fact, take this out of context or not. Take a look.
Donald Trump has no character. He doesn't give a damn about the Latino community. He's failed businessman. He only cares about the billionaire friends he has and accumulating wealth for those at the top. He says immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country. Give me a break. He wants to do away with the birthright citizenship. Who the hell has said that in the last 100 years? And just the other day, a speaker at his rally called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. Well, let me tell you something. I don't know the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable, and it's un-American. It's totally contrary to everything we've done.
Okay, so actually the full context is worse. The full context is not just a gaffe, an inadvertent admission of what's going on in Joe Biden's head, that he thinks you and I are trash for supporting Trump. The full context is worse because it contains lies. In fact, he said the demonization of Latinos is unconscionable under Trump. Well, let's just remember the reality here. During the Donald Trump presidency, the unemployment rate for Latinos, for Hispanics, was at historic lows. This is, by the way, the number one issue that voters care about when it comes to our choice of a president. They care about the economy and they care about jobs. The number one issue in this election cycle, it's reflected in inflation. People care about inflation most. Well, that's because it impacts their jobs and how much money they're bringing in and the devaluation of their currency. People care about that the most. Trump was good for Latinos. The Hispanic voting population actually liked Trump when he was president. But what does Joe Biden do? He actually insults Latino Americans, American citizens of Latino descent, because he conflates all Latinos with illegal aliens. He only highlights President Trump wanting to secure the border, President Trump making it harder to come here illegally, President Trump making it more difficult for illegal aliens to take jobs from American citizens. And Joe Biden is conflating someone of Latino descent with illegal aliens. That's so insulting. It's like looking at someone and being like, well, you're Latino, maybe you're illegal. That's incredibly demeaning, incredibly insulting. And I believe we've been told by Joe Biden's friends in the media that makes someone racist if you generalize or stereotype based on their race or their skin color or their heritage. All right, my friends, let me ask you a question. Do you feel that our country is going in the right direction? Well, I actually know what answer you're going to give me because statistics show, or polls are showing, that 79% of us feel that the United States is not going in the right direction. A lot of us feel like everything's falling apart, in fact. So if you're alarmed about the state of our country, you're not alone. In fact, Americans from all walks of life have taken action to prepare for whatever is coming next. We are less than a week from the election. We don't know what the next days, weeks, months, years are going to bring. And being prepared starts with having an emergency food supply in your home. Storing food in your home, it's the right thing to do. It's the smart thing to do. It's the prudent thing to do to prepare, because we are living in crazy times. This is not normal. which explains why so many of us are preparing. My husband and I are preparing as well. And right now you can join us. You can get ready too with a 3-month emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. The other week, I know I've told this story before, but a couple weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago, Kamala Harris made some insane, idiotic comment about wanting to impose price controls on the food supply chain. And I looked at my husband and I said, if she does this, this is going to cause food shortages and grocery store runs overnight. People are actually going to starve if she does this. And I asked him, do we have emergency food so that we don't starve? And he said, of course, we're prepared. We have 2 pallets of My Patriot Supply in our basement right now, which came as a great relief to me. I highly encourage you to do the same. The entire kit offers over 2,000 calories every day. The food kit itself lasts up to 25 years. Who knows what our country is going to look like by then, but whatever does come to pass, whenever that day may be, you will be ready. Go to preparewithliz.com now to order your 3-month emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. Go to preparewithliz.com. That's preparewithliz.com. Trump's response to this, he was at a rally and he was told about Joe Biden calling all of us garbage in real time. And this was Donald Trump's response. Take a look.
That's terrible. That's what it says. That's what it says. So you have, remember Hillary, she said deplorable, and then she said irredeemable, right? But she said deplorable, that didn't work out. Garbage, I think, is worse, right? But he doesn't know, you have to please forgive him. Please forgive him, for he not knoweth what he said. These people, it's terrible, terrible. Terrible to say a thing like that, but he really doesn't know. He really, honestly, he doesn't. And I'm convinced that he likes me more than he likes Kamala. Convinced. But that's a terrible thing.
One of the things I find to be most entertaining about Donald Trump is his ability to react to something without preparation. Meaning he's at this rally and this happens in real time and he is giving us his authentic first impression and reaction, which means that it hasn't been sent through the political spin room. This is not something that has been strategically constructed as a narrative that this might be helpful for him to say. This is just his feelings and his thoughts. And when I watched that, I thought that's actually very profound. What he said, forgive Joe Biden. He knows not what he does. Now, maybe Donald Trump is actually giving Biden more credit than I would. I think that Joe Biden does hate all of us. I think that his policies have proven that. Joe Biden posted, and the reason that I think that is not just because I'm a Republican and just because Biden insulted me by calling me and you and all of Trump supporters garbage. It's because Biden tweeted out what the mainstream media is calling an apology, but it's not really an apology. I'm going to bring it up and I'm going to read it to you. He said earlier, this is Joe Biden on X. He said earlier today, I referred to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump's supporter at his Madison Square Garden rally as garbage, which is the only word I can think of to describe it. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable. That's all I meant to say. The comments at the rally don't affect who we are as a nation. There are those that are characterizing this post from Biden on X as an apology, but this is not an apology. He didn't say, I apologize. He did not say, I'm sorry. And here's what's the most telling of all. This is why I think that Joe Biden didn't just commit, a verbal gaffe. This is why I think that it's a Kinsley gaffe, that it reveals what's inside, inadvertently reveals what's inside Joe Biden's head. He had nothing to say, nothing kind to say about Trump supporters. This is the president of the United States. He's not on the campaign trail. He is the president of all Americans. He's not just the president of Democrats, just like a Republican president isn't just the president of Republicans. He is the president of all Americans. And he didn't say that because he doesn't believe that, because he doesn't like us. He doesn't want to represent us because he believes that we're deplorables. He believes that we're irredeemable. He believes that we're garbage. Kamala Harris distanced herself from this, but she has to because this is a huge, you couldn't manufacture an October surprise that would be more damaging to a campaign than what Joe Biden said about us does to the Kamala Harris campaign. So even she distanced herself from it. Take a listen.
Do you sympathize with any voters who do feel offended by or insulted by the garbage comments?
I am running for president of the United States. I will be traveling to 3 states today to do what I have been doing throughout. which is talking with the American people about the fact that, first of all, I get it in terms of the concerns they have about challenges like the price of groceries.
Okay, so she didn't really say how horrible it was. She didn't say, I don't think you're garbage. I want to represent you as president. She just kind of in a dismissive way disagreed with Joe Biden. What a fitting way to wrap up the Kamala campaign. What a fitting way for this is the best final message that we could ask for, because this is the decision that we're facing at the ballot box on Tuesday. We are facing a decision of voting for a man who has already shown us, it's not hypothetical, that he will make our lives better. He will make it easier for us to support our families. He will make sure that we are not dying in foreign wars. He will make sure that spending is at least reasonable to the point that inflation is, what was it, at 1.4% when he left office? That things are affordable for us, gas and groceries, that unemployment is low, versus a woman who hates us, who thinks that we're garbage, and whose policies have made our lives more dangerous, whether that's crime in cities across the country, whether that's the open border that she presided over and refuses to take any responsibility for this invasion, even though she's border czar. And her final appeal to voters is trying to demonize us, Trump supporters, as racists, even as she pretends to disagree with Joe Biden, calling us garbage. This is who the Democratic Party really is. And we have to believe them sometimes when they use these words, because they've proven to us through their actions that these words are not just words. Their actions prove this. But go back to 2015 when Hillary Clinton called us deplorables. Show this on the screen. This is Hillary Clinton.
Be grossly generalistic. You can put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
And we're irredeemable, deplorables who are irredeemable. And before that, what were we? Before that, we were told that we were bitter clingers. Take a look at this.
People have been beaten down so long, and they feel so betrayed by government.
So it's not surprising then that they get bitter and they cling to guns or religion or antipathy towards people who aren't like them, or a way to explain their frustrations.
So we're bitter clingers to guns and religion and antipathy towards people who aren't like us. That was in 2008. We became deplorables in 2016 and irredeemable. And then now in 2024, we're being castigated as Nazis. Unfairly. False accusations. The most evil accusation that you could fling at someone else. And Tim Walz is embracing this. Take a look.
You said over the weekend, referring to it, there's a direct parallel to a big rally that happened in the mid-1930s at Madison Square Garden.
Well, look,
you were comparing that rally to a Nazi rally?
Look, I'm comparing it to the hate that came out of this, and I think they confirmed that.
You stand by that comparison, though, to a Nazi rally?
Look, the rally, you saw it for yourself. I'll let the American public make the decision of what they saw.
What about you, though?
So I know what I saw, and I'll just leave it at that.
So bitter clingers to guns and religion, deplorables who are irredeemable, Nazis, and garbage. This is what the Democrat Party thinks of us. This is what these Democrat politicians believe in their minds. It is a Kinsley gaffe. We should bring this renewed definition to the forefront. A gaffe is not just a faux pas. A Kinsley gaffe, a gaffe in Washington, D.C. as a politician inadvertently revealing what's in his mind. In all the time that you and I have been alive, the US dollar has always been the primary currency. I mean, I remember having a shoebox in my bedroom when I was a child, and I had put wrapping paper around it and cut a hole in the top, and I would put dollar bills as I did odd jobs around the house or did yard work for neighbors or cats. I did some cat sitting for a neighbor up the street. I would put money that I earned in that shoebox to save it for something that I wanted to buy. First, I wanted to buy a bike. Then I wanted to buy a car when I turned 15 or 16. And I could count on that money being worth something. I could save that up and know I could use it to purchase what I need. Well, fast forward now, I have 2 children. My husband and I count on this fiat currency, the dollar bills that are in our wallets and in our bank accounts, being worth something. But what if this is not going to be true much longer? What if this fiat currency has been devalued to the point that we can no longer use it to support ourselves and to support our families? We know that the US dollar is facing unprecedented inflation. It's already been devalued. Our politics is getting increasingly unstable. We are now facing politicians who want to control us, and they're looking to use a new digital dollar as a tool to control us. It's why it's never been more important than to take control over our wealth. Don't let your life savings, don't let your retirement account, don't let that money in your bank account, in your wallet, become a casualty of either failing banks, currency wars, or politicians that seek to control us. Now is the time to call the only precious metal dealer that I trust, American Hartford Gold. They'll show you how to protect your savings, your retirement accounts, your wealth by diversifying your wealth portfolio with physical gold and silver. My husband and I are doing this because politicians can spend our money in a way that devalues fiat currency, but they can't devalue physical gold and silver in the same way, nor can they use it as a tool to control us. And by the way, American Hartford Gold is a wonderful company. They support content like this that's committed to bringing you the truth. Tell them I sent you, and they'll give you up to $15,000 of free silver on your first order. Go ahead and call them right now. You can click the link in the description of this episode, or you can call 866-996-5172. That's 866-996-5172, or text Liz to 998899. Again, the phone number is 866-996-5172, or text my name, Liz, to 998899. Why would Joe Biden make this remark? Well, it's because he's trying to energize his own base. If you look at the state of this election right now, we are 6 days from Election Day, which is actually the final day of election season. There are very few people who have decided to vote for Kamala who are going to change their mind and vote for Trump. Likewise, there are very few people who've decided to vote for Trump who are going to change their mind and vote for Kamala. But there are people who might lean one way or the other, who might not feel motivated to go cast their ballot unless something gives them the motivation in the next 6 days to actually vote. So both sides are trying to rev up the energy of their base. It's all about, from now until Election Day, it's all about enthusiasm. It's not even about making the case to change someone's mind. It's just about energy, just about enthusiasm, just about turning out the vote. Well, the mainstream media is doing their part. They're trying to make Kamala's voters, or people who lean towards Kamala, enthusiastic enough to cast their ballots by instilling fear and hatred towards us in those people's hearts. This is the Democrat strategy. They can't run on politics. They can't run on their record, their policies. They can't run on optimism. So they revert to demonizing us and to lying about Donald Trump. Trump, meanwhile, he can actually make his base enthusiastic just by being optimistic for the future based on his record as president, which he's already proved to us. And this is what's so interesting about Donald Trump, as he can counter this idea, or this, it's not an idea, he can counter this demeaning insult, this horrible castigation of Trump voters, by pointing out the reality that Donald Trump has built a political coalition among factions, political factions, like we've never seen in our country before. We have Donald Trump, we have RFK, we have Tulsi Gabbard, who converted from Democrat to Republican, RFK being historically a Democrat who's now married Make America Great Again with Make America Healthy Again, and then Trump, the populist arm of the Republican Party. This is a coalition. This is actually the definition of a big tent party. Because it's not that these other people are making Republican values or are making us shift away from Republican principles. It's that we're saying, hey, Republican principles work best for you, even if you don't agree with every single thing that our party stands for. This is actually what it means to be a big tent party. This is inclusion. This is welcoming. And the Democrat Party tells us that we're garbage. And by the way, this whole thing was even started because the mainstream media has been frothing at the mouth for the last couple days about the Madison Square Garden rally, where a comedian, Tony Hinchcliffe, made a joke about Puerto Rico being an island of a floating island of garbage. And I would like to say two things quickly about this. First of all, a comedian making a joke, even if you find a joke offensive, even if you don't like that joke, a comedian making a joke is not nearly as bad. It's not even comparable to what the impact that politicians' policies have on our lives. So put those two things on a scale, and a comedian making a joke, even if you don't like that joke, means nothing compared to what a politician is actually doing that is making our lives worse. That being said, the comedian's joke wasn't racist. If you actually just Google this, it's quite interesting. Puerto Rico historically has a problem with trash disposal, with waste disposal. This is something that if you go to Puerto Rico, they know. they actually make jokes about it themselves. The joke was not about the Puerto Rican people. It wasn't even about the country being in bad shape, like when Donald Trump has talked about the condition of Haiti or other third world countries. It was literally about the mountains of actual trash that exist on Puerto Rico. So the mainstream media is lying to you about what the joke even was, hoping that you're too stupid to research it yourself. But all of that notwithstanding, doesn't even compare to the devastating impact of Kamala Harris's policies. What's actually garbage here are Kamala's policies, where she spent $170 billion on the Ukraine war, which is not only gotten us involved in a forever war, brought us to the brink of World War III, where we now have to fear, are we going to be sent to die in a war in Ukraine? Are our children going to be conscripted, forced by the draft, our sons and our daughters, be sent to war in Ukraine? Not only is that dangerous, that we are on the brink of nuclear war, because Kamala was the one, by the way, that started this. Kamala was the one that invited NATO into Ukraine and Ukraine into NATO, causing Vladimir Putin to invade Ukraine, knowing that Kamala Harris was also so weak, she and Joe Biden, that they wouldn't do anything about it. But this excessive spending, this giving Zelensky a blank check over and over and over, has devalued our currency here at home, which has caused inflation. It's caused inflation to skyrocket by 20%. We're now paying 46% more for gas, 22% more for groceries, 30% more for electricity. House prices, the median house price, thanks to the inflation rate and thanks to the interest rate, it's now twice as expensive to buy a home under the Kamala Harris-Joe Biden administration as it was compared to during the Trump administration. Meanwhile, if you want to talk about racial politics, which is what Kamala constantly falsely accuses Trump of engaging in, it's Kamala actually that a court found to be engaging in racial discrimination. Kamala Harris discriminated against white farmers. There were grants given by the Biden administration to farmers, and Black farmers were prioritized because they were Black. There was a certain percentage of that money that was earmarked just for Black farmers, but Black farmers make up only a very small percentage of all farmers. So they got way more money than white farmers simply because white farmers were white, and a court found that that was racial discrimination and illegal. Kamala was found by a court to be engaging in illegal racial discrimination. That's wrong. It's immoral. It makes her a racist. Not to mention, the Supreme Court found that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's affirmative action programs affirmative action programs that they supported vocally were racist and un-American. That's what's garbage. The policies that allow men to play in women's sports and try to strong arm schools, from elementary schools to high schools to public colleges and even private universities, to allow men to play in women's sports or lose all federal funding. That's Kamala Harris's track record. Putting critical race theory into your child's school, diminishing your parental rights so that your child can be transed in school without your knowledge. These are the things that Kamala Harris stands for. Those are garbage policies. But instead, she just lies about us. So this is what I propose. I propose that we make America clean again. This is, for those watching, you'll see this meme on the screen. For those listening, let's cue up this meme. This is probably the best meme about Joe Biden calling us garbage that I've seen. It's Trump as a garbage man. He's sitting in a garbage truck wearing the garbage collector uniform, and the title is Make America Clean Again. See, this is the difference between Republicans and Democrats. We also have the capacity to laugh and to enjoy life. And if that makes us garbage, well, like I said at the beginning, there's nobody I'd rather slum around with than you fellow pieces of trash. The New York Times right now is reportedly preparing to write a hit piece on conservatives these couple of days before the election. They've reportedly, allegedly, compiled a list of YouTube videos that contain what they consider to be election integrity disinformation. And they're going to try to hack conservatives, and conservatives covering election integrity, like this show does, are not disinformation. We are holding our election system accountable. But if you listen to just the mainstream media, they are not only lying to you and gaslighting you about the reality of what's happening on the ground, they are also a tool for big government. Big government will use reporting like the New York Times' hit piece that's about to come out to justify censoring us and to justify silencing us. And that's why Election Day this year is about so much more than just politics. The mainstream media is the arm of the Democratic Party. We cannot let the Democratic Party silence us. We can't let them censor us. On election night, you're going to want to watch coverage and be able to listen to information that you can trust. You want to know that you're being told the truth and that you're not being used as a pawn, that you're not being manipulated by a mainstream media organization. So join us on election night. All the other Blaze TV hosts are going to be there with me. We're at a crossroads in our nation. The future of our nation is being decided in real time. This is your chance to be part of something amazing. Blaze TV is going to have boots on the ground across the country. Our correspondents are going to be delivering the pulse of the night straight from where it's happening to you. All you have to do is subscribe and you can experience this pivotal night with us. At Blaze TV, you know, we speak the truth. No spin, no filters. Just real talk, breaking down what's happening in real time. We'd like to have you with us. Just go to blazeelection.com/Liz and you can get $40 off. That's blazeelection.com/Liz for $40 off. By the way, I owe you guys a huge, huge thank you. We passed a milestone on YouTube this week that made me very excited and very proud. We passed 400,000 subscribers on YouTube. 400,000 of you clicked subscribe and said, yes, I want to watch your episodes. I want to get news from you. I want to hang out with you and unpack what's happening in our culture and our political sphere together. And I really, really appreciate you guys. This is a tough business. We've faced a lot of censorship on YouTube, a lot of demonetization, a lot of strikes against our channel, a lot of algorithmic suffocation, you might call it. But you guys have stuck with me through thick and thin, and I appreciate you. I don't think you're garbage unless, of course, unless we should repurpose that word and now use garbage as a positive word. Tim Walz reportedly had a secret affair with the daughter of a Chinese Communist Party official in China. Tim Walz. This is according to the Daily Mail. They report Tim Walz had a secret fling with the daughter of a high-ranking communist official during his 1989 teaching stint in China. Jenna Wang, who is now 59 years old, claims that the VP hopeful showered her with gifts and seduced her at his pokey staff accommodation at No. 1 High School in Foshan, Guangdong Province. The lovers could not risk holding hands or showing affection in public. Convenient for Tim Walz, is it not? Because Wang's dad was a high-ranking figure in the Chinese Communist Party who would disown her for fraternizing with a Westerner. But, the Daily Mail reports, their romance blossomed behind closed doors as they sipped tea, made love, and listened to George Michael hits, leading the then 24-year-old Wang to dream about marriage and a new life in the United States. No proposal was forthcoming from the future Minnesota governor, however, and the shame of being treated, quote, like a prostitute, eventually left Wang feeling angry and suicidal, she claims. There's a photo that the Daily Mail has of the two of them in the same picture. This is what she told dailymail.com. Tim was very passionate and very romantic. I can still remember dancing with him to our favorite song, Careless Whisper. The fact we couldn't touch or kiss in public just made it all the more exciting and intense when we were finally alone. We were deeply in love, and I wanted to marry him and start a family. When it didn't happen, I felt very unhappy and sad. Tim's behavior was very selfish, she said. The Daily Mail says Walz's time in China is already a source of controversy after he misleadingly claimed in interviews and congressional transcripts that he was in Hong Kong when the Tiananmen Square protests erupted from April to June of 1989. It later transpired that he didn't join the staff of nonprofit World Teach in China until August of 1989, prompting Walz, age 60, to profess during a recent VP debate that he was a knucklehead when recalling dates. So, Tim Walz stopped the daughter of a Chinese communist official. That's enough to be disqualifying. What is it with Democrats? First, we have Eric Swalwell banging a Chinese spy, and now Tim Walz. Why is it always the nastiest guys that do the nastiest things? And by the way, what the Chinese communists actually thought of Tim Walz, this is what the New York Post reported. The Chinese Communist Party saw Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as a prime target for its influence operations in the U.S. This, according to internal Department of Homeland Security communications, shared the same day that Vice President Kamala Harris picked him as her running mates. A DHS official wrote on August 6th on an internal nation-state threat national functional team chat, which a whistleblower recently disclosed to congressional committee, and I quote, You all have no idea how this feeds into what PRC, the People's Republic of China, has been doing here with him and local government. It's seriously a line of the intel. Target someone who is perceived that they can get to DC. So they thought that he was a patsy. They thought that they could use Tim Walz as part of their influence operations in Washington, D.C. And you know what? Somehow I suspect that they were successful. Somehow I suspect that Tim Walz would simply say yes if it meant sacrificing. What principles does he have for money and influence and political power? Absolutely disgusting. And yet you'll notice that the same press that falsely accuse you and I of being Nazis because we support Trump, the same press that is running interference like crisis PR for Joe Biden after he called all of us garbage, won't ask Kamala Harris or Tim Walz a single question about this affair that Tim Walz engaged in with the daughter of a Chinese communist politician. All right, now it's time for a few headlines today. A surrogate for the group Women for Kamala, the surrogate's name is Charlotte Clymer, was caught in a voter suppression scheme. There's three elements to this story. First of all, it's always the left falsely accusing Republicans of engaging in voter suppression, which we never do. But they claim that anytime we notice, objectively observe any kind of election integrity, violations of election integrity, that we're making it up. They say we're conspiracy theorists, that our words, our rhetoric incites violence, but actually it's the left that's always committing these crimes. And perhaps that's why they hurl these false accusations at us, because if you are hurling, this is a Saul Alinsky tactic. If you hurl a false accusation at someone, it's harder for them to be like, nah, you're the one doing it. It's a good cloak to cover the crime that they're actually committing. So this surrogate for Women for Kamala, his name is Charlotte Clymer. But actually, before we even get into the crime that's been committed here, Charlotte Clymer actually isn't a woman. Charlotte Clymer identifies as a transgender woman, but Charlotte Clymer is a man named Charles who changed his name to Charlotte to present as a woman. A fake, a fraud, a woman for Kamala surrogate. If this isn't an exact illustration or encapsulation of what Kamala Harris thinks of women, a surrogate for Women for Kamala is an actual man. Well, Charlotte Clymer's PAC, All Vote, ran this scam in the state of Pennsylvania, which is a swing state, and in North Carolina, also a swing state, and in Arizona, also a swing state, where victims were sent text messages that stated that they had already voted. Now, these text messages were a lie. They originated from the super PAC, and these victims were told that they'd either already voted or they were told that they're not registered to vote in order to extract their personal information. It's a phishing scam, essentially. Now, you'll remember in 2016, there was a young man on the right named Douglas Mackey who on Twitter, at the time it was called Twitter, posted a meme telling people that they could vote for Hillary by simply texting a phone number. Now, this, of course, is not true. The phone number was a phone number he had just made up. And when you texted this phone number, it obviously did not count your vote. You can't vote by text. But Douglas Mackey was put in prison for sharing this meme on Twitter because he was told that this was voter suppression. He was told that this was election interference. He was sent to prison. And so it makes you wonder what exactly is going to happen to this man who is pretending to be a woman, Charles, who calls himself Charlotte Clymer, who was caught in an almost identical, but much worse, voter suppression scheme. Because at least when Douglas Mackey engaged in this, first of all, free speech should cover this. This should not be a crime in the case of Douglas Mackey. But it would have been people sending a text message that would have had to engage in an active action to fall prey to this when Douglas Mackey did it. But when it comes to Charles Clymer, these people were sent text messages out of the blue without soliciting them, being told that they had already voted. So we should hold Charles Clymer to the same standards that the left held Douglas Mackey to, or perhaps worse, because the crime Charles Clymer committed is much worse than the meme that Douglas Mackey shared. Meanwhile, in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, the Trump campaign is suing the county, claiming that voters who were seeking mail-in ballots were turned away early. This is not just a claim the Trump administration is making. This is factually what is happening on the ground. Bucks County is a critical county in the state of Pennsylvania. Not only is Pennsylvania itself a swing state, Bucks is the swing county within the swing state, which means that just a couple of votes could change the outcome of the election. And this is what's being reported. According to the Trump-Vance campaign, voters were turned away while trying to get mail-in ballots on Tuesday, which was the last day that they were able to request them. The Pennsylvania Department of State made it clear that if voters are in line at a county elections office by 5 p.m., the counties must give voters the opportunity to apply for their mail-in ballot. Pennsylvania voters were turned away as early as 2:30 p.m. This is against the law, the Trump campaign says. This is voter suppression from the left. We will fight for every legal vote in Pennsylvania. Go vote. And the Trump campaign says, stay in line. Now, this is obvious electioneering, you could call it. This is rigging of the vote. This is voter suppression. But it's also an encouraging sign that the Trump team is willing to fight for your vote and mine before the election. The last election, you could say that we were caught flat-footed. Are we going to be caught flat-footed again? Well, I've said before, yes, we are, because the RNC and other Republican apparatuses have not adequately prepared and fortified election systems to prevent the electioneering that happened in 2020. But in this particular instance, the Trump team is on it. They identified exactly what was happening wrong and where it was happening and who was engaging in the illegal behavior, and they are going after it legally before the election results. This is the way to do it. This is kudos to the Trump campaign for taking action to prevent our votes. In the swing state of Nevada, the Nevada Supreme Court has denied a Republican appeal in a mail-in ballot lawsuit. What's happening in Nevada is non-postmarked ballots, meaning mail-in ballots that didn't have a stamp on them or a postmark, that were received up to 3 days after Election Day were slated to be counted. Now, this is obviously unfair. This is obviously ripe for fraud. Up to 3 days after the election without a postmark. I mean, can we say dumping ballots once we know how many ballots are needed to close that gap if Trump is in the lead here? That's obviously what the Democrat operatives in Nevada are planning here. Republicans sued over this because it's unfair. And the Nevada Supreme Court has denied the Republican appeal. So now in the state of Nevada, the day after the election day, November 6th, 2 days after, November 7th, 3 days after, November 8th, mail-in ballots can be counted even if they are received after the election and even if they have no postmark on them. Do you know who's behind this lawsuit, behind this electioneering? None other than Mark Elias himself, the man who constructed the electioneering around COVID in 2020 that led to Joe Biden appearing to win the vote count. It's happening again. But this time, my friends, we are watching. In Virginia, we covered this last week. In Virginia, there's been a law in the books for 18 years that allows the state of Virginia to remove from the voter rolls anybody who is an illegal alien or who's not a legal citizen of the United States and therefore eligible to vote. If this is done on an individual basis, this removal of illegals from the voter rolls, then the law is legal. This law is not new. Like I said, it's an 18-year-old law, and it was even submitted to the Department of Justice 18 years ago to make sure that it was legal. And the Department of Justice gave a thumbs up and said, yep, you're good. You can enforce this. Go ahead and execute this law. Well, just this year, the Department of Justice under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris sued the state of Virginia, claiming that this law is unconstitutional. Multiple courts have ruled against Virginia in favor of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's Department of Justice, saying that Virginia cannot remove these illegal aliens or non-legal voters from the voter rolls. Virginia filed an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court yesterday, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Virginia. The state of Virginia, I can hear the cheering. I can hear you guys clapping and shrieking right now. The state of Virginia is allowed to remove illegal aliens who are not eligible voters from the voter rolls. There are up to 1,600 illegals on the voter rolls in the state of Virginia. The Supreme Court ruling was 6-3. That means just Sotomayor, Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson voted against this, or voted with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. And that in and of itself is a good sign. That means that John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett voted with the conservatives. This is something to celebrate. Meanwhile, in the state of Colorado, the Secretary of State accidentally revealed the passwords to the voting machines. It's hard to believe that this headline is even true. She published on the website of the Colorado Secretary of State, she published an Excel-style spreadsheet, and on a hidden tab that some user just clicked unhide to reveal were the passwords of the voting machines. The voting machines require 2 passwords to change the system configuration, how the votes are counted. And now at least one set of these passwords has been revealed to the public. And the Colorado Secretary of State is gaslighting voters, saying she doesn't believe that this is actually a threat to election integrity. She said this has been reported to CISA, which is the federal government agency dedicated to cyber and infrastructure security. But she says, don't worry, even though the passwords have been revealed, meaning hackers, foreign actors, malicious, domestic opposition to election results, don't worry, they have the passwords, but we just trust that they're not gonna rig this election or hack us in any way. I don't know about you, but the way that you and I, as citizen journalists, are cataloging all of the vulnerabilities to fraud, the evidence to fraud, the electioneering, the lawsuits, it's going to be different this time. There's not going to be the deniability that the left enjoyed after 2020, where they could just say, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Unfair elections, who ever heard of that? Who would cheat? This time, people know. We are watching. We are going to hold accountable anybody who illegally changes rules, who in an unauthorized way changes laws, who cheats, and who disenfranchises voters. We are watching. Make sure you join us, by the way, on Election Day. You can go to blazeelection.com/Liz. We're all going to be live covering this, watching this all evening as we wait to see who the next president of the United States will be. So go to blazeelection.com/Liz. Again, thank you to all of you who helped me cross the 400,000 subscriber benchmark over there on YouTube. If you're not already a subscriber, which I guess a lot of you are right now, go to youtube.com/Liz Wheeler, hit that subscribe button. Also hit the bell so I can notify you every time we have a new episode, a new interview, a new video. Also, make sure you subscribe on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, 2 platforms where we don't face censorship. We do often on YouTube, as you know. You can just go to Spotify, go to Apple Podcasts, search The Liz Wheeler Show, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you leave me a 5-star review on both platforms. Also, on Friday, we have a fantastic and somewhat chilling episode for you. Mike Benz will join us on the show to talk about the Biden administration's underreported plans to create an information czar of the federal government. An information czar is exactly what it sounds like. Someone who, in government, is in charge with combating so-called disinformation. Can you say censorship? We're going to talk about all that and more on Friday, so make sure you are subscribed. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.